Coming back from my previous life, I decided to avoid every opportunity to cross paths with Ethan Jong this time. Around when he said he wasn't going home. For the holidays I packed my bags and returned to the village alone when he helped Lucy Snow rent a place next door. I moved out when he chose to stay and work at the university. I applied to a school in the Northwest in my last life. Even when I was old, even our children urged me to divorce him. They said it was so he and Lucy could finally be together after death, as their tragic love story deserved. As I stared at the acceptance letter in my hand, tears almost fell. No one knew I had been reborn. At the very last moment, I had changed my university application to the Northwest Institute of Technology. Even my teacher was surprised. Didn't you say your fiancé was staying at the university? How could he wait for you if you go so far away? I smiled and replied brightly, it's the era of free love now. Childhood betrothals are just remnants of a feudal society. Completely outdated. The teacher, seemingly impressed by my resolve, patted my shoulder with approval. Leaving the school, I followed the crowd toward home. In my last life, I didn't even attend university. My wedding to Ethan was just a few days away, and shortly after I had a child. That was the end of my education. Ethan stayed at the university for a while before joining the army. From then on, we lived separate lives. He climbed the ranks, and wherever he went, Lucy Snow and her daughter followed. I, on the other hand, was trapped in a small corner of the world, caring for his parents and raising our children. I watched my kids grow, once clinging to me but eventually drifting closer to their father. One day, I even learned about Ethan and Lucy's daughter's wedding to my son through a photo from a friend after the ceremony had taken place. The picture showed Lucy and Ethan smiling warmly as they watched their daughter-in-law pour tea for them. My own son had urged me to divorce Ethan more than once. Mom, Dad has suffered his whole life. If it weren't for you, he would have been with my mother-in-law long ago. You two aren't a good match. Why won't you let go? Even my daughter-in-law refused to see me. What could I do? I wasn't willing to let go. I couldn't forget the sleepless nights I spent caring for his paralyzed parents, or rushing barefoot through the night when my child was sick, only to find him entertaining Lucy and her daughter elsewhere. Everyone said we weren't a good match. Everyone blamed me for not letting go. But when I looked in the mirror at the weary, aged face staring back, I couldn't help but feel defiant. Even if it cost me my life, I would drag them all down with me in the and I died after yet another fight with my son about divorcing Ethan. My heart attack came as he stormed out, slamming the door without a backward glance. I called for him, but he didn't turn back. That moment I regretted it all. Why had I given birth to him? Why had I wasted my life like this? But now I've been given a second chance. I'm back to before my marriage to Ethan, and everything can be changed. When I got home, I hid my acceptance letter and started cooking. The two-bedroom apartment was one of Ethan's perks from work. While the food simmered, I circled the date on the calendar for my university reporting day, with the red pen staring at the marked date. My heart filled with hope. Soon, very soon, I would be free. When dinner was ready, Ethan came home as expected with Lucy Snow and her child in tow. Sorry to bother you again, Lucy said, smiling sweetly in her bright red coat, her alabaster skin glowing. The little girl, clearly accustomed to the routine, gleefully rushed to serve the food. One bowl for herself, one for Ethan, one for Lucy, none for me. When I emerged from the kitchen, the three of them were chatting happily like a picture-perfect family. But as soon as they tasted the food, they spat it out. Mommy, it's so salty, the child exclaimed, leaning against the door frame. I watched Ethan scramble to pour soup for them, only to find it colder than the food. In tears, Lucy whispered, it seems your wife doesn't welcome me here. I'll stop coming in the future. Ethan walked her to the door. When he returned, he frowned at me. I ignored him and went back to the kitchen to prepare a fresh meal. You did that on purpose, he said, his voice laced with confusion. Lucy's husband died and asked me to look after her and her daughter. Your cooking is great and the child likes it. Before he could finish, I interrupted with silence. After a moment, he sighed and said, fine. If you don't like it, I won't invite them over again. The next day after Ethan left for work, I started packing my bags. I planned to return to the village soon, since our families had exchanged tokens and birth dates for the betrothal I needed to formally break the engagement, with witnesses present to avoid complications later. As I packed I came across the embroidered bedding I had worked on in secret for years. I thought for a moment, grabbed a bag and packed everything: embroidered pillowcases, new shoes I had crafted, and other belongings. I walked to the pawn shop at the end of the street. The embroidery that had taken me years to complete sold for 30 yuan. It wasn't much, but at university every penny counts for meals and necessities. I set the money aside, ready to save it for the future. Back home I marked another large X on today's date in the calendar. Just 20 days left. In 20 days I'd leave this place and embark on my new life. Nothing. I shook my head, smiling bitterly. No matter how noble his excuses sounded, his underlying intentions couldn't be hidden. For the sake of the Liang elders, and to avoid tarnishing his reputation, I wouldn't confront him openly, but that didn't mean I could forgive or forget. That night Ethan ended up sleeping on the living room floor. The next morning I packed up all my belongings, planning to find a hotel before returning for the rest of my luggage. When I opened the door, Ethan had already prepared breakfast. Yin spotted me immediately and let out a disdainful hum, pulling the food closer to herself and Lucy. Ethan, holding a plate of fried eggs, greeted me with a smile. "You're up, come." I made fried eggs. He noticed the food hoarded on their side and awkwardly chuckled. Yin, be a good girl and share some with Auntie. Okay. Ignoring all of them I left the house. The only hotel nearby was just a street away. I booked the cheapest room. 4 days, paying yuan in total, including a deposit. Afterward I grabbed some breakfast at a nearby stall, a bag of buns and fried dough sticks, before heading back to collect my luggage. As soon as I stepped inside I saw that my carefully packed bundle had been opened. My belongings were scattered everywhere. On the table Yin was folding my college acceptance letter into a paper airplane. My mind went blank. "What are you doing?" I shouted, snatching the letter from her hands. Startled, Yin fell off the chair and began wailing at the top of her lungs. Lucy came rushing out of the room. "What are you doing? Who gave you the right to bully Yin?" she yelled, shoving me aside and scooping the child into her arms. My hands trembled with anger as I carefully unfolded the crumpled letter, making sure it wasn't damaged. "Bully her? Why don't you look at what she's done? Who told you to touch my things? Get out of here." Lucy stood up, holding Yin, and sneered, "You're not even married to Ethan yet. This isn't your house to order us around." She walked toward the door but paused to add, "Even if you do marry him, you'll never win against me." The door slammed shut. Lucy's hostility only surfaced when Ethan wasn't around. In the past I had been insecure and timid in the face of her beauty and talent. As a star performer in the art troupe she had every advantage: looks, career, and charisma. I always thought I could never compete with her. But now, having a second chance, I realize, why should I even try? In Ethan Zhang's heart, Lucy Snow was always the most important, but aside from him, wasn't there more to my life? I could go to college, I could contribute to the development of my country, I could see the world, broaden my horizons, and enrich my knowledge. This swamp of a situation would only hold me back. After finishing my packing, I drew another bold X on the calendar. Then I shouldered my bag and left for the hotel I had booked when I was first reborn. I considered confronting Lucy at her workplace. After all, she had ruined my previous life. My anger was hard to suppress, but what would come of it? As long as remained by her side, even if she lost her job, he'd support her. For Lucy it wouldn't be much of a loss, and as long as I cared about repaying the young elders for their kindness, as long as I didn't want to destroy Ethan completely, Lucy would remain untouchable. The real issue, after all, was Ethan himself. If his thoughts were upright, Lucy would have no hold over him. There were so many of Ethan's comrades from the army. Why wasn't anyone else acting as godfather to Lucy's child? Exactly that. The hotel I tidied up briefly and took out some stationery to write Ethan a letter, setting aside his constant absence after we married, setting aside his entanglement with Lucy that lasted a lifetime. I thought back to the years I spent in high school here. Ethan had provided for my food and lodging, and even occasionally helped me with my studies. For that alone I owed him an explanation. In the letter I told him that I had already gone back to dissolve our engagement and had been accepted into a university elsewhere from now on. Our paths would diverge and we'd never see each other again. Halfway through writing, there was a knock at the door. Thinking it was hotel staff, I opened it, only to see Ethan standing there looking disheveled and as though he'd been searching everywhere. The moment he saw me, he let out a heavy sigh of relief. Finally, I found you. As long as you're safe, that's all that matters. I stayed silent, expecting him to scold me. All right, don't be mad anymore. Come back with me, he said as he squeezed into the room, reaching for my belongings to help pack. I quickly pressed my half-written letter under a book, but his eyes fell on a silver bracelet peeking out of my bag. His expression shifted as he picked it up. Why is this bracelet here? Wasn't it with my mother? I froze, cursing myself for not putting it away earlier in the afternoon when Ian had rummaged through my things. A small bell had fallen off and I'd fixed it. This bracelet was the token from our childhood betrothal, which I'd retrieved recently. Ethan's face grew more perplexed. Why do you have this bracelet? She'd be with my mom. As I scrambled for an explanation, he suddenly chuckled. I get it, my mom must have asked you to bring it to me. He placed the bracelet back into my bag and added casually, just keep it for now, we're getting married in anyway, so what's mine is yours. I relaxed slightly, but my hand still pressed firmly against my bag. Ethan frowned. Are you still upset? Ian was wrong. Sure, but she's just a child. Stop being so dramatic. Do you know how worried Lucy was when you ran out? She even scraped her knees looking for you and is still resting at home. I stared at him coolly and his words faltered. You know, I began with a laugh, this afternoon your daughter was rummaging through my bag when I told her to stop. Your precious Lucy said I had no right to tell her off. She even said that even if I married you, I wouldn't be able to compete with her. Ethan's expression darkened. What, my daughter? She's just my goddaughter. I ignored him and continued. You used the excuse of taking care of a comrade's widow to get close to her, but if your late comrade knew how you've been taking care of his wife, do you think he'd rest in peace?